After losing everything, he dedicates himself to becoming the strongest warrior and seeks vengeance. The Labyrinth City, a hub for aspiring adventurers from across the land, draws individuals of diverse species and backgrounds. They come to hone their skills, hunt formidable monsters, and earn wealth and renown. Among these adventurers is Nick, a talented swordsman seemingly blessed with a perfect life. He excels in combat, has a loving girlfriend, and belongs to a prestigious party. But his world unravels unexpectedly when his foster father and mentor Argas, the leader of his party, summons him for a talk. Argas delivers a crushing blow. Nick is no longer welcome in their party. He accuses Nick of lacking the proper mindset of an adventurer, calling him overly self-righteous and self-important. The accusation stems from Nick's attempt to expel a party member caught embezzling their funds. The betrayal completely blindsided Nick, but his string of misfortunes was far from over. Later that day, he meets his girlfriend Claudine at a tavern to confide in her about being expelled from his party. Expecting sympathy, Nick is instead met with cold disdain. Claudine, revealing her true colors as a gold digger, derides him as a useless failure now that he's jobless. Without hesitation, she breaks up with him and walks away. Shattered by heartbreak twice in a single day, Nick finds himself sitting by a fountain oblivious to the rain soaking him. Lost in his despair, he is approached by a mysterious blue-haired girl. When he brusquely tries to dismiss her, she surprises him by handing him a ticket to her performance. Introducing herself as Agate, an up-and-coming idol, she urges him to attend if he has no better plans. Leaving the ticket and her umbrella behind, she dashes off, calling him Mr. Stray Dog and insisting he come for sure. With nothing left to lose, Nick decides to attend Agate's show. The moment he sees her perform, he is utterly captivated. Drawn into her vibrant world, he becomes an idol enthusiast, spending every coin he has on Agate's merchandise. Realizing he needs more funds to sustain his newfound passion, Nick heads to the Adventurers Guild the next day in search of work. Nick searches tirelessly for a party willing to accept him, but every group he approaches is already full. In the corner of the guild hall, he notices a blond man standing alone and considers striking up a conversation. Yet, self-doubt gnaws at him, reminding him of his previous rejection. Hesitating too long, he loses the chance as someone else approaches and recruits the man. Dejected after failing to connect with anyone all day, Nick retreats to a tavern. Seeking solace in alcohol, he orders a cheap beer and tasteless food, sitting alone at a table. Around him, the raucous laughter and chants of camaraderie from other parties grate on his nerves, amplifying his bitterness more than the bland meal ever could. His solitude is interrupted when a group of strangers enters the crowded tavern, and they have no choice but to share Nick's table. One by one, they take their seats, and it becomes clear they are not together. The first is a richly dressed young woman, her elegant attire and large magical stone marking her as someone from a noble family. Nick wonders why someone of her status is in such a place. The second arrival is a disheveled man wearing a priest's uniform. His drunken state and the cheap perfume clinging to him betray his recent visit to the red light district. Moreover, the absence of a cleric's medal suggests he was dismissed from the church. The final member is a dragon girl, her body covered in scars that speak of countless battles. Yet, beneath her hardened exterior, Nick senses the fragility of a wounded and frightened creature. At last, the drinks arrive, and Nick decides to raise a toast, not to celebrate, but to mourn everything he had lost that day. Turning to the strangers sharing his table, he mockingly toasts to their shared misery. After downing his beer, he slams the mug on the table and exclaims that humans cannot be trusted. To his surprise, the others shout the same thing at the exact moment. The shared outburst catches everyone off guard, and they exchange glances, realizing they all carry similar scars of betrayal. Gradually, they begin to share their stories, starting with the noblewoman. Her name is Tiana, and she recounts her life as the star pupil of the nation's most prestigious magic academy. Renowned for both her exceptional talent and her modesty, she was admired by teachers and peers alike. One day, while visiting the cafeteria, she spotted her fiancé seated with another woman. Naively, she approached him, eager to share the praise she had received from her instructors for a new magic spell she had developed. However, her fiancé's fragile ego and deep-seated insecurities came to the surface. Feeling threatened by Tiana's success, he lashed out, accusing her of being arrogant and self-centered. To make matters worse, the woman with him chimed in, accusing Tiana of looking down on commoners and those who were not born into noble families. Tiana continues her story, revealing how the accusations escalated. The woman accused her of seducing teachers to secure better grades, and shockingly, her fiancé believed it. He didn't allow her to defend herself and abruptly ended their engagement. Heartbroken and humiliated, Tiana left the academy. With her father's reluctant permission, she moved out of their estate to start anew. She arrived in Labyrinth City seeking employment, but rejection greeted her at every turn. Despondent, she wandered the streets until she stumbled upon an advertisement for a gambling company. On a whim, she purchased a ticket and, to her astonishment, won her very first gamble. Emboldened by her initial success, Tiana embraced gambling wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, her luck soon ran out, and she lost everything she had, including her savings. With no money left to pay her rent, she decided to try adventuring as a last resort. The next day, she went searching for a party but unintentionally scared off anyone who approached her. Her stern, unapproachable expression proved to be a deterrent. Defeated and frustrated, Tiana sought refuge in the tavern, drinking to drown her sorrows. The priest, introducing himself as Zem, recounts his past as a respected healer in a small town. One particular girl frequently assisted him by collecting medicinal herbs. Zem expressed his gratitude by rewarding her with generous payment for her efforts. However, one evening, the girl arrived at his clinic with significantly fewer herbs than usual. When Zem attempted to give her a coin for her work, she unexpectedly took his hand and confessed her feelings, asking him to love her as a woman. Zem, a man of strong principles, gently refused, explaining that as a priest he was forbidden from engaging in romantic relationships. Instead of accepting his explanation, the girl was deeply hurt by his words. She fled in tears, angrily cursing him as she went. The following day, while Zem was treating patients, a group of priests entered his clinic, forcibly taking him outside. To his shock, the girl stood behind them looking devastated. Zem rushed to her, desperate to understand what had happened, only to learn that she had accused him of harassment simply because he had rejected her proposal. She sobbed as she threw the coin Zem had given her, claiming he had paid her off to silence her. Zem, unable to explain himself, found himself unjustly accused without a chance to defend his actions. Zem spent 3 months imprisoned in a grimy cell. When he was finally released, he was paraded before an angry mob and then exiled from his hometown forever. Weak and disheveled, Zem made his way to a nearby town where he was greeted by a beautiful olive-skinned woman who seemed to recognize him. She smiled at him, but Zem quickly noticed that she was suffering from severe back pain. Without hesitation, he offered to heal her. That night, he worked tirelessly to ease her discomfort, and by morning she felt significantly better. She expressed her belief in his goodness and advised him to go to Labyrinth City, where he could live freely as an adventurer, free from guilt. Before he left, she handed him a bag containing cleric robes, a staff, and a magic book. Although Zem hesitated to accept the gift, the woman insisted, explaining that the items had once belonged to a friend of hers who had been an adventurer. From that point on, Zem developed a fondness for more mature women and decided to pursue a carefree life, enjoying his adventures while relishing his relationships with them. The dragon girl, Curran, is the last to speak. When Nick asks her to share her story, she is momentarily startled. She confesses that something precious was stolen from her by someone close to her, causing the others to awkwardly assume she's referring to her virginity. However, it turns out that Curran, heavily intoxicated, is simply unable to express herself clearly. After a few more drinks, the group disperses for the night. The next morning, Nick wakes up in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by his drinking companions from the previous evening. Tiana, standing nearby, tells everyone this is her room and orders them to leave. As they begin to leave, Nick stops them, asking if parting ways here is truly the best option. He proposes that if they stick together, they could earn enough money to live comfortably. He points out that as outcasts with no place to belong, they should form a party among themselves. The others quickly embrace the idea, and they head to the Adventurers Guild to register. The elderly receptionist notices Nick, recognizing him as the primary offensive member of a famous party, and observes that Curran is the only person to have ever survived a solo return from the Sea Lev dungeon. She asks what they will call their party. Nick confidently replies, "The Survivors." That night, the group gathers as Nick outlines the rules to prevent further betrayal. He states that they all share a history of being wronged, and he wants to ensure they don't face such deceit again. The first rule is simple. No one will interfere in another's personal affairs and everyone will mind their own business. The second rule involves equal oversight of their finances, ensuring no one person holds all the responsibility. The third and most crucial rule is that no matter the circumstances, they will survive each day together. The following morning, they begin exploring the G-level dungeons. These are easy enough, but they must defeat the boss to progress to the next level. Since Zem and Tiana have no prior battle experience, Nick takes it upon himself to teach them how to handle monsters. He demonstrates on a slime, showing them how to kill it and extract its core, which they can then sell at the market. The group moves forward, laughing and chatting as they grow more comfortable with each other. On reaching the next floor where others are harvesting slime cores, Tiana confidently states that the task is easy and that she's capable of handling stronger opponents, having already defeated goblins and even an orc. However, as she speaks, she slips on a slime, and another one attaches itself to her face. She quickly dispatches both, but Nick laughs and advises her to be more careful. Irritated by the situation, Tiana attempts to shoot the slime off with her ice magic, but her attack inadvertently results in a bit of friendly fire. Fortunately, Curran, being an experienced adventurer, blocks Tiana's ice magic with her sword. However, the atmosphere grows tense as Tiana attempts to apologize. Curran, angered, snaps at her, expressing how she tried to trust her only to be let down. The two remain at odds for the remainder of their time in the dungeon. Eventually, they reach the top floor. As they walk, Zem notices a large pink slime ahead, and Nick explains that it's the boss slime they must defeat. Without hesitation, Tiana, acting recklessly, charges toward the slime and casts a powerful ice spell at it. The icicle freezes the slime, but just as she thinks she's won, the slime explodes, covering them all in its goo. They exit the dungeon with their objective completed. But now they must clean the sticky slime off themselves. While they wash, Nick tells Tiana to calm down and seek advice when she's unfamiliar with a situation. He also tells Zem to stay at the rear of the group as he has no offensive abilities. Realizing that none of them truly trust each other, Nick decides to initiate an exercise. He strips down to his pants and lays everything out in front of them, explaining his abilities. He tells them that while he excels in swordsmanship, hand-to-hand combat, and small weapons, he cannot use magic, heal, or wield heavy weapons like Curran. He emphasizes that understanding each other's limits can foster trust, and now they know exactly what he is capable of. The priest, Zem, begins to explain his abilities and limitations. He shares that he is skilled in healing but lacks any offensive power, making him vulnerable to both magical and physical attacks. Next, Tiana steps forward to express her apologies. She tells Curran that she excels in ice and wind magic and can also use lightning and earth magic. However, her biggest weaknesses are fire magic and close-quarter combat. Afterward, she returns to her seat, feeling rejected by Curran. In an attempt to warm herself, she casts a fireball nearby, starting a small fire. Eventually, they reconcile and prepare to head to the goblin forest. Once there, they are ambushed by a group of goblins. Nick explains that while these goblins aren't particularly strong, they tend to attack in groups and can set traps if adventurers aren't cautious. One of the goblins attempts to strike Zem, but he blocks the blow just before Nick swiftly dispatches the goblin with a slash. Nick proceeds to cut down several more goblins, reducing them to pieces. Once again, Zem is saved from another attack, this time by Tiana. After successfully defeating the first wave, Nick asks Tiana to use her ability to detect magic and locate where the remaining goblins are hiding. She informs them that there are about 10 more ahead. However, she becomes flustered when she senses a particularly strong goblin, one that possesses 5 times the magic power of an average goblin. Nick immediately becomes alert, recognizing the threat as an evolved form of goblin, a hobgoblin. He warns the group that hobgoblins are typically much stronger and are usually encountered at later stages. Zem asks if they should retreat, but Nick refuses, explaining that if they flee, the goblins will begin attacking nearby villages. Nick quickly devises a strategy, stating that hobgoblins are nearly immune to magic, meaning their best option is heavy physical attacks, a strength that only Curran can deliver. He assigns roles. He and Curran will go on the offensive, while Zem's job is to provide continuous buffs, and Tiana will offer cover fire. The group agrees to the plan, and the battle ensues. Curran and Nick charge toward the goblins, while Tiana uses her Ice Shard ability to eliminate several goblins. Zem focuses on buffing the team. The hobgoblin summons additional goblins from hiding, but Nick swiftly clears the ones in front of him. Curran, trusting Tiana, continues charging forward, with Tiana clearing the path using her ice magic. Nick makes a direct assault on the hobgoblin, delivering a powerful fiery sword slash that instantly kills it. With the leader defeated, Nick finishes off the remaining goblins. The group congratulates each other on their victory, and Nick explains that they need to extract the horns from the goblins, as they can be sold at the market. As they continue, Curran begins to open up to them and shares her backstory. She explains that dragon people are always meant to support a hero, someone they serve and protect with their lives. For Curran, that person was a man named Kalios, whom she had met recently. He was always kind to her, and in return, she was always ready to risk her life for him. One day, Kalios informed her that they needed to venture into a C-rank dungeon. Without hesitation, she agreed. Before entering, she decided to place all her important belongings, including a precious heirloom pendant from her father, into a bag for safekeeping. At the last moment, Kalios told her that they couldn't carry too much, so she should leave the bag behind. Trusting him, she complied and followed Kalios and his 2 cronies deep into the dungeon. There, she fought and killed numerous insect monsters, while the others reaped the rewards. Later, Kalios informs Curran that they must now face the final boss, a giant snake inside a pot. He explains that if the snake sees them, it will retreat into the pot, making it impossible to strike with magic. Therefore, Curran must attack the pot itself to provoke the snake into emerging, allowing them to defeat it. Curran agrees and charges towards the pot. As she moves it, the snake emerges and begins attacking her. one of the mages launches a fire attack at the snake, which causes it to prepare a counterattack with magic. Curran asks Kalios what is happening, but he urges her to keep attacking and not worry. Trusting him, she continues engaging the snake while waiting for Kalios to assist her. Eventually, the snake ensnares her and unleashes its toxic breath, wounding her and leaving her barely conscious on the ground. She watches as Kalios approaches the weakened snake, swiftly killing it with his sword. He casually tells Curran that the snake becomes extremely fatigued after using its poisonous attack, and that they only needed her to tire it out. Kalios and his cronies laugh at her, leaving her to die as they walk away with the rewards. Somehow, Curran manages to escape the dungeon, crawling back to the tavern where they had been staying. She collapses in front of the door, and people gather around her, questioning her. Kalios had spread the word that Curran had perished in the dungeon. She asks them where he is, but the tavern owner replies that Kalios had left the city some time ago. Curran rushes to her room only to find her worst fears confirmed. The bag containing the heirloom pendant, the Dragon King's jewel, is missing. Devastated, she leaves her room and searches for any sign of Kalios, but finds nothing. One day, she encounters Fifths, a renowned solo adventurer and war hero. Curran begins to follow him, visiting every restaurant he frequents, seeking solace in the food as she tries to fill the void left by Kalios. Over time, however, her funds deplete, and she resolves to earn money and enjoy more delicious meals. This is when she crosses paths with Nick and the rest of the party. The following day, Nick spends time with Curran in the market, enjoying snacks and discussing life, which strengthens their growing trust. That evening, they return to the tavern, where they are becoming more widely recognized. The assistant receptionist calls them upstairs, where the old receptionist awaits with a special mission. She explains that there is a facility, built by an ancient civilization, that contains a sword forged using a long-lost technology. The task is to recover this sword with a generous reward awaiting them. Nick listens carefully to the details, and the next day, the group enters the facility, defeating monsters and advancing deeper inside. The facility they enter appears remarkably advanced for its time, with cameras, automatic lights, and other sophisticated features. They come across an area where a green lamp is glowing. When Nick attempts to inspect it, the wall suddenly gives way, revealing a massive dark room. They proceed inside, and as the lights flicker on, a voice begins to speak, congratulating them on their progress. The group soon realizes the voice emanates from a broken sword at the center of the room. It becomes clear that this is the legendary sword they had been sent to retrieve. After some deliberation, they reach for the sword, but it resists, pleading with them not to sell it, as it has been trapped here for too long and craves action. Without warning, an explosion shakes the room, and the sword warns them that its guardian, Amalgam Golem, has been awakened. Through the dust, a massive blob-like creature emerges, growling menacingly. Tiana, quick to act, fires a barrage of icicles at the creature, but it absorbs the attack. Curran charges at the monster, slashing it to pieces. The sword yells at her to retreat, but Curran ignores the warning. The monster retaliates by shooting the icicles back at her. One of the icicles strikes Curran in the stomach while another hits her in the head, knocking her to the ground. Zem quickly begins healing Curran, while Nick assesses the situation, realizing that the threat could escalate rapidly. He charges at the golem, attempting to slice through its legs, but the creature regenerates almost instantly and counters with an attack. Nick urgently orders the others to lift Curran and flee toward the door, hoping to escape. As he continues dodging the golem's strikes, the sword strapped to his back suddenly warns him that no ranged attacks or sharp weapons will have any effect on the creature. The only way to defeat it is by using the sword itself. Taking the sword's advice, Nick draws it. The bladeless sword flares with a brilliant light, transforming into a powerful energy saber. Meanwhile, the rest of the group struggles to break down the door. Tiana reports that the door is impervious and they are unable to breach it. The golem strikes at Nick again, but this time he evades the blow and slashes at the creature, severing one of its arms. To his shock, the detached limb springs to life, grabbing him, while the golem punches him through several shelves and into a hole below. Tiana reacts quickly, casting a freezing spell on the golem and shouting at Curran to find Nick and ensure his safety. Fortunately, the spell works, freezing the golem in place, and Curran rushes past it into the hole. However, the golem soon breaks free from the ice and begins moving toward them. Zem immediately casts a buff on Tiana, who uses her freeze spell again, attempting to buy time for Curran and Nick to escape. Curran reaches Nick, who is buried beneath the rubble, and begins clearing the debris. Nick urges her to leave and save herself, but she stubbornly refuses, insisting that they will all get out together or none will. With determination, she clears the final stone, helping Nick to his feet, deepening his trust in her. At that moment, the sword instructs Nick to utter a specific spell. Meanwhile, Zem and Tiana nearly out of magic, while the golem advances relentlessly, poised to finish them off. Just when all hope seems lost, Nick emerges from the hole, now fused with Curran, and unleashes a devastating blast, reducing the golem to fragments. Tiana and Zem stand in awe as they witness Nick and Curran now united with a magnificent set of shields and wings. The power of the ancient sword, known as the Sword of Bonds, allows Nick to overpower the golem. Despite the golem's core regenerating, Nick, now fused with Curran, uses the sword to obliterate it, causing the core to fall to the ground. Afterward, Curran and Nick separate, both lying on the ground, breathing heavily with the sword still in their possession. They return to the guild, where they give the old receptionist a replica sword, as the original sword has transformed into a small white-haired named Kazuna. Kazuna pleads with them not to sell him to another antique shop. Afterward, everything settles, and the party returns to Tiana's place, where they divide the money evenly before going off to enjoy their free time. Later, the group meets in a tavern where Nick shows them the remaining funds. After spending most of their money, they find themselves nearly broke, unable to even buy snacks, which dampens their spirits. However, Nick lifts their morale with an encouraging speech, urging them to continue their adventures by heading to the next dungeon. Upon entering the dungeon, they discover an icy lake, with creatures frozen within it. They also spot a giant ogre sitting on the ice. The group moves stealthily, positioning themselves for an ambush. Curran, treating it like a game, gets closer to the ogre, which excites Kazuna. Eager to prove himself, Kazuna dashes toward the ogre, shouting and ruining the surprise attack. As the ogre raises its icy club, Kazuna draws his sword and blocks the blow with its aid. The group is taken aback by Kazuna's unexpected display of strength, as the ogre seems formidable, and they never anticipated Kazuna blocking its attack with his slender sword. The ogre retreats and fires an ice blast at him, which Kazuna effortlessly swats aside almost as if playing tennis. He charges at the ogre, attempting to strike with his sword, but the creature blocks the attack with its club. Kazuna grins and activates another impressive ability, creating a clone of himself. The clones surround the ogre, attacking from both sides and swiftly killing it. As the group gathers around him, Nick remarks that he feels unusually fatigued despite not having participated in the fight. Kazuna explains that it's because he drew on Nick's stamina and mana to perform those feats, as they are linked. After exiting the dungeon, while Tiana and Zem opt to rest, Curran, Kazuna, and Nick, feeling hungry, head towards a nearby food establishment. As soon as Nick spots the diner, a wave of dread washes over him, for it's the very same place he used to frequent with his ex-girlfriend. This is where she broke up with him. He attempts to suggest to the group that they go elsewhere, but they've already entered, and he begrudgingly follows. Inside, they place their orders, but Nick's mood darkens as memories flood back. Suddenly, a familiar voice catches his attention. He turns around to find his ex-girlfriend, Claudine, sitting with a young man at the very table where they once sat together. The young man is handing her a gift which she claims is a birthday present. She tells him that she needs money to return to her hometown to care for her sick mother. The young man, eager to please, reassures her that he will take care of it. This is too much for Nick. He storms over to their table and sits down beside the young man, much to Claudine's shock. The young man is visibly confused while Nick confronts them, asking how many birthdays Claudine has in a year. Just a few months ago, he celebrated her birthday with her and gave her a gift. The young man looks utterly baffled while Claudine glares at Nick, telling him to leave them alone. Nick pushes further, remarking that he had thought her mother was already dead as she had asked for money for the funeral just a few months ago. This infuriates Claudine, and in a fit of rage she jumps to her feet, hurling the gift at Nick before storming off. The young man looks at Nick with sadness, but Nick merely reassures him, saying he dodged a bullet. The next morning, Nick and his party are having breakfast at a tavern when a large tiger-like man suddenly pours a drink all over Nick. Unfazed, Nick learns that this man, Leon, along with Claudine, is here to exact revenge. Leon claims he heard that Nick had been bothering Claudine. Nick simply smirks and retorts that he no longer associates with gold diggers. Leon challenges him to settle the matter outside, and both men head out. In a dimly lit alley, Nick prepares for a fight, but Leon suddenly begins apologizing. He confesses that he is done with Claudine and is considering leaving her behind as he has used her long enough to make money. Leon reveals that Claudine is part of his group, working with him to deceive others. He also believes that Nick is doing the same to his own party, and offers him a place in his gang once he's finished stealing from them. This suggestion enrages Nick, who responds with a powerful uppercut that sends Leon flying. The tiger-like man quickly rises, drawing a machete in a cowardly manner and attempting to strike Nick. However, Nick effortlessly dodges the attack, counters swiftly, and pins him to the ground with an arm lock. Out of nowhere, Nick is struck by a magic attack from behind. He turns to see a magician, clearly part of Leon's team, preparing for another assault. Before they can strike together, Curran arrives, using her tail to suspend the magician upside down while Nick walks away calmly. Leon attempts to launch an attack but halts when he notices the guild's elderly matron, who immediately threatens to summon the guards if he doesn't leave. However, Leon boldly announces that he is formally challenging Nick to a duel. To everyone's surprise, the matron allows it, and Leon reveals the nature of the duel. It will be a unique mathematical duel, in which Nick and Leon will fight in the ring while one member from each team solves math problems. The first team to answer correctly and quickly will earn the right to strike their opponent. This kind of challenge is unfamiliar to everyone except Nick. The elderly matron produces a bag containing slips with the names of each team member. These slips will determine who will be responsible for solving the math problems. From Leon's team, Claudine is selected, but to Nick's dismay, Curran is chosen from his team. Unfortunately, Curran has no grasp of basic mathematics, as she never needed to use it before. Overwhelmed and nervous, she struggles to say anything, fully aware of her inability to solve math problems. Later, Zem administers a practice test to assess her skills, revealing that even the simplest questions are beyond her. She can only correctly answer 20% of the problems. The following day, Curran begins studying with the team's support, while Nick sends Zem out to gather information on the Tiger Gang. The day before the final duel, they all meet at Nick's rather untidy place. Zem returns with troubling news. The Tiger Gang consistently cheats by using magical crystals that allow them to communicate telepathically. This gives them a significant advantage, as they can rely on their third member to handle the calculations and relay the correct answers to their teammates. Curran, disheartened and overwhelmed by her lack of mathematical skill, is certain there is no way they can win, especially with the other team cheating. However, Nick devises a plan, which he shares with the group. The team feels more hopeful, as they now have a strategy to expose the cheater. The following day, Nick and Leon enter the ring while Curran and Claudine sit across from one another, ready to tackle the math questions. The battle begins as the old lady presents the questions, while Nick and Leon engage in light jabs, testing each other without landing any significant blows. As Curran reviews the questions, she realizes she has seen them before and begins solving them with confidence, while Leon taunts her, claiming there is no way she can compete with Claudine. Despite her nerves, Curran manages to answer the questions faster than Claudine in the first round. However, when the scores are revealed, Curran only answered 80 questions correctly while Claudine answered 98. As a result, Curran loses the round, and Leon is granted a free hit on Nick. He delivers a punch straight to Nick's gut, knocking the wind out of him. Curran is deeply concerned, believing that her failures are the reason Nick is being hurt. As the next round begins, the question sheets are delivered and the match proceeds. Nick attempts to wear Leon out, but the Tiger proves clever, backing off and evading his attacks. Once again, the round ends with Curran losing to Claudine, resulting in Nick taking another heavy punch to the face. Distressed, Curran apologizes to Nick as he starts bleeding, but he reassures her, expressing his faith in her and his certainty that she will help them win the next round. This boosts Curran's morale, and she begins to tackle the math problems with renewed determination. Meanwhile, Claudine scans the crowd, hoping to spot someone aiding their cheating efforts. However, she quickly realizes that no one is using magic crystals. This makes her realize that the opposing team believes they can easily defeat Curran without resorting to cheating. If this is the case, it could disrupt Nick's plan. To counteract this, they initiate the second phase of their strategy. As Nick tries to stall, Tiana draws attention to herself, suggesting that the matches are taking too long. She proposes solving all the questions at once, so the match can be decided in a single round, with the loser taking all penalty punches at the end. This proposal shocks everyone, but the public, growing tired of the slow pace, eagerly agrees. Both players are handed all of the questions at once. Tiana knows this is a gamble, as Curran has no idea how to solve the questions, but she is familiar with them and begins filling out the sheet. Claudine, seeing this, starts to feel a sense of panic. Despite knowing she could easily solve all the questions herself, she doubts her speed and resorts to cheating. Using her magic crystal, she communicates with a nerd hiding in a clock tower, who uses a calculator to give her the answers. Tiana, ever watchful, scans the area once more and this time spots the nerd. She quickly leaves the arena with Kazuna and Zem and heads to the watchtower to apprehend him. Leon, noticing something is amiss, tries to warn Claudine, but Nick keeps pressuring him with a series of attacks, preventing him from intervening. Meanwhile, Tiana and the others reach the tower and capture the nerd. Claudine, now furious, loses her composure. Tiana returns to the arena with the bound nerd, who smiles smugly as she reveals the magic crystal. The old lady, recognizing the cheating, disqualifies the Tiger team and calls the guards to escort them away. Later that evening, Nick and his party head to a tavern to celebrate their victory and enjoy their newfound earnings. Tiana, feeling lucky, decides to visit a casino. Kazuna, having heard about a unique ice cream sold only at that particular casino, insists that Nick accompany him there. They enter the casino, and while Kazuna gets in line for the ice cream, Tiana heads to a table to join a game with 4 other participants. She quickly starts winning large sums of money, while Kazuna, disappointed, finds that the ice cream is sold out before he can try it. He expresses his desire to leave, but Nick encourages him to stay and observe the gamblers for a while. Meanwhile, Tiana is effortlessly winning against a shabby-looking man who is spending money on behalf of a wealthy blue-haired girl behind him. Suddenly, chaos erupts in the casino as a massive tiger monster crashes onto the scene, wreaking havoc. The creature easily swats away the guards and corners Tiana, demanding to know where Nick is. Tiana then recognizes the beast. It is Leon, the very same tiger they had fought just the day before. It turns out that after being captured, Leon, consumed by his hatred for Nick, used a special sword much like Kazuna's. The sword transformed him into a monstrous form, and he followed Nick's scent straight to the casino. Leon demands that Tiana reveal Nick's location, but she calmly replies that she doesn't know. When he threatens her, she lights a cigarette, leaving the Tiger Man momentarily confused. In an instant, she uses a magically infused lighter to blast him away, then begins fleeing with a blue-haired woman who had been trapped with her. The Tiger Man quickly regenerates and hurls a bench at them, sending it crashing into their path and knocking them flying. As he approaches, Tiana urges the blue-haired woman's companion to take her away. The monster approaches Tiana, draws his sword, and prepares to strike. Just in time, Nick appears, blocking the attack with his energy sword. Furious, Leon curses at him and unleashes more dark energy from his sword, transforming into an even larger, more formidable beast. He strikes at Nick, but Nick skillfully dodges the attack. Tiana, sensing the urgency, calls for them to merge so they can end this. The two back off, using Kazuna's power to fuse into a stunning female knight clad in exquisite armor and capable of flight. Tiana unleashes an ice ball attack, but Leon, in a rage, breaks free from the casino's walls and begins rampaging inside, destroying everything in his path and tossing people around. Tiana forms an ice prism shield around Leon, trapping him inside while icicles begin to pierce him. However, Leon manages to break free. Tiana then uses the casino's magic cards, which possess anti-magic properties, to neutralize the effect of Leon's special sword. With his powers sealed, the massive tiger reverts to his normal form and falls unconscious. Tiana locks the sword in an ice prison, ensuring it can never be used again. Leon is returned to prison. And a few days later, Nick visits him. The two reconcile, letting go of their past animosity. Nick tells him to get out soon so they can share a drink together. Later, Nick is jogging as part of his morning training when he hears a voice urging him to keep going. The voice sounds identical to Agat's, his idol, so he assumes it's just his imagination. However, to his surprise, it's the real Agat, running behind him and offering encouragement. She tells him that she resides in the hearts of her most devoted followers, and Nick has finally reached that level. She suggests he take a break as he must be tired. Nick agrees, but when he turns around and sees Agat standing there, he is startled. Later, Nick and Agat sit on a bench where she reflects on his progress and realizes that he now has a clear goal, no longer like the lost soul she first met. She expresses her happiness for him, but her thoughts drift, and she reveals that when she gave him the ticket, she was unsure if it was the right decision. Even after he attended her show, that uncertainty lingered. She worried that by giving him the ticket, she might have inadvertently turned him into a fan who would obsessively buy her merchandise, risking his own life in the process. That guilt had weighed on her, but now, seeing Nick live a better life, she feels relieved. In response, Nick tells Agat that had he not become an idol fan, his life would have been drastically different. He admits that perhaps being a fan of hers pulled him from darkness, and for that he is grateful. Agat acknowledges his words, feeling comforted, yet there is a lingering sadness. Nick senses that something is troubling his idol. As she has recently canceled all her shows and public appearances, she seems to carry a heavy burden, and there is a deeper story behind her current state. Agat's real name is Belle, and she once performed as a singer in her boyfriend's restaurant, a place so quiet that no one ever came. Her songs went unheard, and she found herself lost, unsure of the direction her life was taking. One evening, a wealthy bald man clapped for her performance and unsolicitedly offered advice. He introduced himself as a producer and asked if she would be interested in becoming an idol. Belle was too stunned to respond, but soon her boyfriend Dunny arrived and confronted the man. Initially acting tough, Dunny's attitude shifted when he heard that idols made a lot of money. Seizing the opportunity, he agreed to let the producer manage Belle's career. Though unsure, she allowed Dunny to act as her manager, and the producer handed him a ticket to an idol concert so they could learn more about the industry. At the concert, Belle felt too shy to even glance at the other girls who were being scouted. However, when the idols took the stage and began performing, something changed in her. She was mesmerized, and in that instant her heart filled with desire. She longed to be like them, to have people listen to her songs and enjoy them. Fueled by this newfound ambition, Belle decided to pursue a career as an idol. Like the other girls, she adopted a stage name and began her training to join an idol group. As Agat's career flourished, her relationship with Dunny began to deteriorate. He started asking her for money, claiming his restaurant was failing, and she could not refuse him. Soon, Agat discovered that he was squandering the money she lent him on gambling, which left her feeling deeply troubled. This shift in his behavior made Agat reflect on their past. Dunny had once dreamed of opening a restaurant where everyone could enjoy a meal in peace, with a stage for her to perform. She gazed at the restaurant, contemplating how things had changed. On the same day Agat encountered Nick, she witnessed his breakup with his ex-girlfriend and felt pity for him. Later, as the rain began to fall and Nick made his way home, Agate decided to follow him. She approached him at the fountain and struck up a conversation, a seemingly casual moment that would change his life. Shortly after, Dunny suggested taking Agate to the casino to witness his big win. For some reason, his words felt like a subtle breakup to Agate, though she still accompanied him. It was at the casino that she met Tiana, who struck her as the goddess of gambling. Agate watched in awe as Tiana dominated the casino table, winning everything in sight. But she noticed something strange. Tiana's gaze was always fixed on her. Agate realized that Tiana wasn't aiming to destroy others, but rather herself. After Tiana took all of her money, Agate smirked and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Later, she witnessed the fused version of Nick and Tiana, but she could only recognize Tiana. Agate watched in admiration as Tiana, now a paladin, defeated the massive tiger monster with her magical sword. The sight of her strength and elegance left Agate in awe, inspiring her deeply. The following day, the bald producer cleared Dunny's debts and instructed him to focus solely on cooking without distractions. However, he also insisted that Dunny completely sever his ties with Agate, making it clear it was not up for debate. Dunny tried to plead with Agate, but she calmly told him that the dream he once had of opening a restaurant was innocent and full of hope. She confessed that she would have given up being an idol to support that dream. But blinded by the lure of easy money, Dunny no longer cared. Agate, feeling disillusioned, told him that staying close to her would only worsen his life and personality, and they needed to part ways. Dunny laughed bitterly, accepting their breakup. He claimed it was her loss and vowed that one day he would surpass her success. As Dunny walked away, Agate approached him one last time, handing him the queen card she had found the day she encountered Tiana. She told him that the beautiful goddess of gambling would protect him. Dunny snatched the card from her hand, mocking her gesture as foolish, and then departed, saying his goodbye. This marked the end of their relationship. Agate soon saw Dunny working his way up from the bottom, but they both chose not to engage with each other. Time passed, and Agate made her return with a solo performance. Nick, as expected, was in the audience. When Agate took the stage, she began by apologizing for her sudden hiatus. She explained that during her break she had met a goddess. Agate reminisced about the casino incident, where a beautiful female knight had defeated the tiger monster. Nick froze in shock, realizing that Agate was referring to the day he had witnessed that event. Agate revealed that this legendary paladin had given her hope and inspiration, prompting her to write a new song in her honor. As she performed, her teammates acted out the supporting roles. Agate swore to the paladin that she would become a true idol, one who would bring hope to the lives of her fans. The following day, after finishing his workout in the park, Nick enjoys a drink when he suddenly hears Agate's voice. She pretends to be his inner thoughts, playfully bantering with him from behind a bush. Nick asks if she's okay, noting that she seemed quite down the last time they met. Agate responds that it's natural for her to feel down sometimes because, after all, she's human. She talks about how people are constantly surrounded by worries when, out of nowhere, she notices a stray puppy. She gestures for it to come closer and begins playing with it. Nick then remarks that whenever people resolve something troubling them, they take a step forward, and that's the best anyone can do. A few days later, Kazuna enthusiastically talks about an article in a magazine discussing the mysterious stepping man. He excitedly informs his friends about the stepping man, described as a kidnapper with ghost-like abilities who cannot be stopped. Curran suggests they should confront such an evil figure, but Nick dismisses the idea, claiming the stepping man is just an urban legend. Kazuna, frustrated, insists on showing Nick the witness testimonies, but Nick tells him not to believe everything he reads in a third-rate gossip magazine. Despite Nick's dismissal, Kazuna continues ranting about the stepping man, drawing the attention of a green-haired nerd passing by. She places her card on the window and introduces herself as Olivia, one of the chief writers of the magazine Kazuna is holding. Kazuna expresses his admiration for Olivia's work, to which she responds by boasting that she is not only a writer but also an adventurer. To demonstrate her skills, she hops around and performs some clumsy gymnastic moves. In her enthusiasm, she stumbles into Curran before continuing on her way. Later that evening, as Zem is returning from his usual visit to the pleasure district, he spots a girl walking ahead of him on the dark streets. Suddenly, she is pulled into the walls and disappears, causing Zem to lose half of his hangover. Meanwhile, Nick and Kazuna, who had attended a live idol concert, are heading home, discussing how impressive Agate is. Kazuna suddenly feels that Zem is in danger, and they rush to his location, finding an invisible phantom attempting to harm him. Nick panics, realizing that the story of the stepping man is true. However, Kazuna appears to have figured out the trick behind the phantom's invisibility. He throws a sword at the stepping man, but it simply bounces off. Surprised that they can see him, the stepping man becomes defensive. Kazuna summons shadow clones to attack, but the stepping man jumps away and retaliates with a steel chain. destroying the clones before fleeing. Kazuna curses him, and they quickly go to Zem, who has been holding on to the girl the stepping man had been attempting to kidnap. They take Rana to Zem's preferred establishment, where the boss lady tends to her. They inquire if she knows anything about the incident, and she explains that the stepping man has a personal vendetta against her. She fears no one will believe her because she's just a child, but Nick reassures her that they do. Rana reveals that her mother used to leave the house at night to confront the stepping man, but now her mother is lost and in the hospital. She explains that her mother knew the stepping man was kidnapping children, but no one believed her. Zem tells Rana that they believe her story because they saw the mysterious kidnapper with their own eyes. He commends the courage of Rana's mother, who tried to fight the stepping man alone. His words move Rana, and she suddenly stands up, requesting that Zem accept her as a disciple. She says that his bravery in trying to save her earlier inspired her, but as she steps toward him, Nick intervenes. He is about to reveal Zem's backstory of being betrayed by a girl who once tried to get close to him, but Zem stops him. Zem tells Rana that she is 15 years too young to be his disciple. Rana asks how she should train in the meantime, and Zem tells her to drill here and return home by the next morning. He also warns her never to do anything dangerous again, to which she eagerly agrees. She attempts to rush toward Zem once more, but both Nick and the boss lady stop her again. Kazuna lets out a deep, frustrated sigh as he realizes the stepping man, whom he had been so excited about, is nothing more than a petty kidnapper. Determined to unmask his identity and destroy him for betraying his expectations, Kazuna convinces the group to visit a Wild West-style bounty hunter guild. They approach the receptionist and ask for information about the stepping man. She is preoccupied, painting her nails, and barely acknowledges them. She only recognizes Nick and informs him that they don't hand out information about high-ranking bounties to adventurers who haven't accomplished anything. Tiana and the others, seizing the opportunity, twist her words to imply that the stepping man has a high bounty, forcing the receptionist to provide them with information. She hands them the wanted poster of a man named Hale Hardy, who has a mid-level bounty. For their first task, the receptionist loudly remarks that team survivors should have no problem dealing with someone like him. Her words attract the attention of everyone in the guild. Many recognize the survivors, but some, particularly a dark-skinned man with a ponytail and an eye patch, express envy. He asserts that bounty hunting is not a job for amateurs like them, but Tiana, undeterred, responds firmly. She declares that they will capture Hale Hardy and bring him back, prompting Mr. Ponytail to bet against them. Upon hearing the word bet, Tiana placed a hefty pouch of coins on the table, challenging the dark-skinned man to match it. His confidence quickly faltered, and he became nervous. Tiana then called on everyone in the guild to join in, encouraging them to bet on the outcome of the challenge. The entire guild soon descended into a frenzy of gambling, with people risking everything from their rent money to their life savings. Meanwhile, Nick and the team ventured into the most dangerous part of the slums, an area so lawless that even the knights dared not enter. As they arrived, the leader of the slums approached them and inquired about their purpose. Nick explained that they were there on a bounty hunt and offered money in exchange for information. The old man, however, refused to divulge any details about the target. Nick pressed on, asking if anything unusual had been happening in the area recently. The slum leader rambled on about a recent litter of puppies and other irrelevant matters. Frustrated, the team decided to search for their target independently. As they were about to leave, the slum leader offered one final piece of advice. He warned them to avoid a person named Nal Nalgava. Though he didn't provide much detail, he stressed that Nal Nalgava was someone of great importance. They ventured deeper into the slums, the stench growing unbearable for Curran. Soon, they encountered a group of thugs attempting to extort a toll from them. Curran and Kazuna swiftly dealt with the troublemakers, while Nick seized their leader, demanding information on Hale. The thug reluctantly gave up the location but then asked for payment in exchange. The group ignored him, but Zem, becoming somewhat playful, grabbed the thug and started inspecting his body, suggesting he might be ill. After some resistance, the thug confessed that he hadn't been able to sleep for days. He angrily protested, claiming that they had no right to meddle in his personal life. Curran, however, reassured him that they understood. Zem then handed the thug a pouch of calming medicine, explaining that it was payment for the information. Grateful for the gesture, the thug warned them that Hale was fast and would try to flee if he spotted them coming. The group continued onward and soon arrived in Hale's vicinity. Zem, troubled by the living conditions in such a wretched place, reflected on the misery around him. Kazuna spotted Hale, who was engaged with his girlfriend. Nick burst through the door, startling both of them, and declared that they had come to collect his bounty. The girlfriend fled, and Hale, attempting to escape through the window, was thwarted by Kazuna, who was already waiting to cut off his escape. Hale was bound and ready to be taken, but just then a priest arrived, stopping Nick and his group. He demanded to know where they were taking his patient. Hale referred to the man as Dr. N. Nalgava. The stern priest warned the adventurers that no one had the right to interfere with his patients, but Nick responded by informing him that they were there to collect the bounty on Hale's head, a man guilty of nearly every crime except murder. Dr. Nalgava scolded Hale, calling him a fool for wasting his life in sin. He explained that he could treat diseases, but not guilt. The priest told Nick that he would not stop them from taking Hale away, though he requested one last chance to treat him. Nalgava revealed that Hale was suffering from yellow demon disease, and that he just wanted to offer him one final treatment before he was taken. Nick argued that the treatment might be wasted if Hale was executed, but Zem corrected him, suggesting that priests should do whatever they could to save lives. Nalgava then asked if Zem was a priest as well. Zem clarified that both he and Nick were former priests. He then inquired why Nalgava, a skilled healer, was working in such a place. Nalgava refused to give a direct answer. At that moment, Kazuna, eager for information, asked the bald priest if he had heard of the Stepping Man, the notorious kidnapper who struck at night. Nalgava, however, denied any knowledge of him. Hale laughed, remarking that the area was filled with kidnappers, so one more hardly mattered. However, Dr. Nalgava advised them to cooperate and shared a lead about a reporter who frequented the area. She would give candy to children in exchange for information. With that, Nick and his team took Hale to the Bounty Hunter Guild. The receptionist was impressed that they had captured him in just one day. Tiana, eager to collect her winnings, approached Mr. Ponytail and took all the money from the bets. He attempted to argue, claiming that some of the money belonged to those who had bet on her. Tiana ignored him and carried the money straight to the receptionist. She instructed the receptionist to buy as much liquor as possible with the money and treat the entire guild. The guild erupted in celebration, cheering for Tiana, while even Mr. Ponytail realized he had lost on all fronts. The next day, the hungover receptionist handed them their reward for capturing Hale, along with the meager information she had gathered on the Stepping Man. The details were vague and nonsensical, things like how the Stepping Man repaired gutters and advised people to stay awake late into the night. The receptionist, frustrated, suggested they focus on capturing real criminals instead of chasing after ghosts. Nick clarified that they were actually searching for the kidnapper who had been posing as the Stepping Man. The receptionist didn't know much about kidnappers, but she did know of someone who gave candy to children to talk to them. She pointed out that the person was right there in the guild, Olivia, the same writer they had encountered earlier, who was currently speaking with Rana. Nick and Zem laughed it off, but Kazuna seemed more intrigued. He mentioned that although he hadn't seen the kidnapper's face, they were light on their feet and used chains. Curran then shared that when Olivia fell on her earlier, she felt unusually heavy, suggesting that Olivia might have used chains to disguise herself. While Nick chuckled, he quickly instructed Curran and Kazuna to block the exits, as he now suspected Olivia. He approached her and inquired about what she did after handing out candy to children. Olivia feigned confusion while Zem ushered the boss lady and Rana out of the scene. Nick continued, asking Olivia if her work as a reporter required much traveling, to which she affirmed. He then asked if her job involved jumping from roof to roof, and she pretended to know nothing about it. Finally, Nick directly asked her where she had been 2 nights ago. Olivia acted oblivious, providing some nonsensical responses. But when Nick asked her why she took children and what her true identity was, her reaction grew more defensive. Realizing she was cornered, Olivia suddenly kicked the table, splitting it in half. Before Nick could react, she was already on the roof, tearing a hole through it to escape, leaving the 2 pieces of the table to fall back into place perfectly. Later, the group gathered at Zem's favorite establishment, reflecting on how unsettling it was to discover that Olivia was the Stepping Man herself. They discussed her speed and the unnatural nature of her movements, which none of them had ever witnessed before. Kazuna, particularly frustrated, expressed his disdain for Olivia writing articles about herself as the Stepping Man, likening her to an evil version of Peter Parker trying to manipulate her own narrative. Just then, the boss lady introduced a special guest, a muscular woman who was actually Rana's mother. She entered with the aid of a cane, and Rana immediately ran to her. Mick recognized the woman named Ada as someone who had been part of an adventuring party for many years. Ada grew nostalgic as Nick spoke about her past adventuring days, mentioning that she had once teamed up with a man named Fifths, someone Curran deeply admired. Ada thanked the survivors for looking after her daughter and assured them that Rana wouldn't do anything reckless while under her supervision. Everyone agreed, and Rana tried to appeal to Zem by calling him Master. Ada was surprised by this, but Zem remained firm. He explained that whenever he saw girls of Rana's age, he felt fear due to an experience from years ago when a girl had deceived him. He had spent months in jail because of her, and after his release he developed a phobia of young girls, which still occasionally caused him anxiety and difficulty breathing. Rana reminded him that he had protected her that night, to which Zem replied that any sensible person would have done the same. However, he confessed that he had hoped saving her might help him overcome the lingering curse of his past. This was why he asked her to wait for 15 years. Ada misunderstood this and, thinking it was a proposal, stated she wouldn't allow her daughter to marry him. Rana quickly clarified that Zem was merely her master, and she was simply being more cautious about choosing a future boyfriend. The group laughed at Zem's rejection, and after some lighthearted conversation, Ada learned the full context. She thanked everyone again for saving her daughter and urged them to abandon their pursuit of the stepping man. She explained that the stepping man, likely the reporter, was far too powerful for them. While Nick agreed with her assessment, he firmly stated that he wouldn't let her kidnap people unchecked. He told Ada that she had no right to stop them, as they could go after anyone with a bounty on their head. Ada was aware of this, and in fact it was her idea to put a bounty on the stepping man to entice adventurers into confronting her. However, she now decided to abandon the pursuit of Olivia and suggested they leave it to the knights. Nick, bowing before her, asked how they could become strong enough to defeat the kidnapper. In response, Ada prepared a gourmet mushroom soup which, though delicious, left Nick puzzled about its purpose. Ada explained that she had used magic shrooms to create the soup, which would help unlock their hidden magical potential. She acknowledged that defeating the stepping man would require agility in both running and combat, and that mastering their magic would be the key to victory. Nick expressed his lack of confidence in magic, while Tiana mentioned she couldn't cast spells in close combat. Zem echoed her sentiments, and Kin admitted she could try, though she wasn't good with complex tasks that required mental effort. Ada, teasing them for being quick to give up, handed Curran a magic lighter. She instructed her to chant the keyword burn while channeling her magic through it. Curran attempted but struggled to concentrate, eventually giving up. Ada handed the magic lighter to Nick, who doubted his ability to use it. However, on his first attempt, he managed to create a small flame, impressing both himself and his friends. While they were surprised, Nick remarked that such a small fire wouldn't be enough to defeat the stepping man. Ada explained that she wasn't instructing him to use fire magic, but rather testing his latent magical potential. She then demonstrated the lighter's full power by unleashing a massive flare, telling Nick that with practice he too could achieve this level of skill. The training session soon commenced. Nick was tasked with walking on a tightrope while Ada explained that the stepping man utilized two key enhancement spells, light body and heavy body. As Nick would be engaging in close combat, Ada aimed to train him with the light body spell, asking him to jump on the rope 10 times. Initially confident, Nick began jumping, landing perfectly each time. However, on the 9th jump, he faltered and fell hard onto the ground, much to everyone's surprise. Later one evening, a girl was returning home after buying bread when the stepping man appeared and abducted her. Fortunately, Kazuna arrived just in time to kick the stepping man away while Curran safely caught the girl. The rest of the team quickly surrounded the stepping man, declaring his plans over. However, Nick still wished to confirm whether Olivia was truly behind the stepping man's disguise. The stepping man, though, remained silent and chose to flee, leaving Nick with more questions than answers. Kazuna suspects that the stepping man is either exceptionally talented or using a magical tool, given that he can employ attack, movement, and illusion magic simultaneously. Tiana suggests they consult an expert in magic tools, so the following day, Nick visits Leon, who is imprisoned. After treating Leon to some meat buns, Nick inquires about a tool that could help conceal one's presence. Leon becomes serious at the mention of this and identifies the tool as the Illusion King's Jewel, typically embedded in another magic device. Nick asks how to counter it, and Leon reveals that breaking the illusion requires speaking the name of its user. However, when Nick tries Olivia's name, the illusion doesn't break, implying that there is someone else behind the disguise. The following day, Nick returns to his training and successfully performs a front flip on the tightrope. Ada continues to push him, reminding Nick of the dedication he hasn't shown in a long time. This prompts him to reflect on his past, remembering how his father figure Argas taught him the art of swordsmanship. Argas emphasized that becoming a true warrior involves more than just wielding a weapon. In the present, Nick displays his agility by effortlessly jumping from one claw line to another, landing gracefully on the ground. His friends who had been watching are impressed by his progress. Zem reports that he has spoken to the residents whose roofs were damaged, and Nick realizes that by tracking these homes they can determine the regular routes the stepping man uses as he jumps from roof to roof. They study the mapped-out route, which leads them back to the slums. They return to the slum leader, but he has no new information, apart from the deaths of 2 puppies. He mentions that a girl from the slums was recently buried in the common grounds, but no one knew her, and he doesn't remember her face. As the party heads back from the slums, a thick mist envelops them. Kazuna senses an enemy trailing them and warns his companions telepathically. Suddenly, Olivia leaps down from a nearby tree and attacks Nick with a series of kung fu moves. Nick uses light body magic to leap over her head, evading her strikes. Olivia accuses him of being the stepping man, but Nick retorts that she is the stepping man. She attacks again, and as Nick dodges, Olivia's powerful punch destroys the iron railing behind him. Kazuna joins the fray, summoning his clones, but to everyone's surprise, Olivia also uses clone magic and swiftly defeats Kazuna's clones. The team is stunned, but Nick recalls Leon's words and boldly asks Olivia if she is truly the real Olivia. Upon hearing this, Olivia begins to act foolish again. She claims that even though Nick accused her of being the stepping man, she won't hold it against him. Nick is now confused and suggests they talk things over. Olivia admits that she is a stepping man, but not the one responsible for the kidnappings. She explains that the term stepping man was once used for anyone who jumped around on rooftops, but now someone is misusing the name. Nick points out that if she had shared this information at the Bounty Hunter Guild, things would have been much simpler, but she doesn't seem concerned. Olivia then uses her strength to repair the damaged railing, and Nick asks her about the clone magic she used. Olivia threatens to expose Kazuna's use of ancient magic, but he responds that he will report her as well. They agree to a compromise and decide to work together to catch the true stepping man. Next, they visit the burial house where the body of the girl from the slums is kept. Upon opening the coffin, they find nothing unusual, but Olivia asks everyone to describe the girl's features in detail. No one can provide a clear description, and Olivia explains that something is interfering with their senses and perception. They turn the girl's body around and a small red gemstone falls from her. Zem picks it up and Olivia identifies it as likely being a fragment of the Illusion King's jewel. Everyone is puzzled as to why someone would go to such lengths to obscure the identity of the deceased. Olivia crushes the gemstone, dispelling its effects, revealing that the girl has an old burn mark on her arm and a mole beneath her neck. Zem examines her eyes and determines they show signs of having been treated for the yellow demon disease. Later, they uncover information about the girl, learning that she was the daughter of a blacksmith and had gone missing over a month ago. They decide to return her body to her parents, and Zem mentions that they can avenge her. Following that, Nick asks him if he has figured out the stepping man's identity, to which Zem confirms, stating that they must stop him at all costs. The next evening, as the stepping man swings through the city using his chains, Nick intercepts him midair and kicks him down. They land on the roof of a building, and the stepping man comments that Nick's light body is still underdeveloped, but his martial arts are impressive. Nick asks the stepping man why he repeats the same pattern of crimes over and over again. He wonders if it is due to overconfidence or if he simply wants to get caught. The stepping man attacks, but Nick easily dodges and charges forward to strike. As they continue to clash, Nick declares that he has figured out why the stepping man kidnaps people and leaves their bodies in the slums. The stepping man tells him that he has yet to understand the most important part. Nick responds, revealing that he had always been curious as to why a skilled healer like Nalgava would work and publish research papers from the slums. As Nick speaks Nalgava's name, the illusion magic shatters, and it is revealed that the stern-looking priest Nalgava is indeed the stepping man. Nalgava congratulates Nick on his deduction, and Nick remarks that the body they found earlier had the yellow demon disease. He wonders aloud how a disease as deadly and contagious as the yellow demon disease is confined to the slums and hasn't spread to the main city. He concludes that there must be a human factor behind it. Nick recalls what Zem had told him earlier, realizing that Nalgava kidnaps people to use as test subjects in his quest to develop a cure for the yellow demon disease. Nalgava declares that there is nothing more to discuss, and Nick launches an attack. Nalgava blocks his strikes, but Nick jumps high into the air and lands a powerful kick. Nalgava manages to block it while warning that the roof won't withstand such force, but Nick was prepared for this. The roof cracks and both of them fall into the building below. There, Nalgava finds himself surrounded by Nick's team with the escape route above blocked. Zem steps forward and asks Nalgava why he is doing all this. Nalgava replies that his daughter died from the yellow demon disease, a fact Zem had already discovered through his research. He explains how most people believed the disease was simply an STD, but one day his daughter contracted it while caring for a patient. She lost her life because of it. Anger fills Nalgava's voice as he recounts how, after her death, people spread cruel rumors about her being promiscuous and responsible for her own fate. Despite her death, they mocked her, and Nalgava became consumed by rage. In his fury, he resolved to find a cure for the disease, caring little for how many nameless people died in the process. Zem questions how he can be both so cruel and so driven by vengeance. Nalgava responds that everyone has multiple sides to their personality, and neither is false. Zem then speaks about the girl they found in the common burial ground. telling Nalgava that when her body was returned to her parents and they explained the cause of death, the entire community mourned for her. Zem points out that she was not some nameless, forgotten person, and even if Nalgava didn't care for her, others did. Nalgava laughs bitterly, coughing as he tells Zem that even if they stop him now, the problem won't simply vanish. Nalgava agrees, acknowledging that even if the problem won't be solved all at once, they can only take it one step at a time. As he gets up, Kazuna suddenly senses an approaching presence and warns everyone. Without warning, a magic beam pierces the door and strikes Nalgava in the stomach. The door is forcefully kicked open, and a man clad in demonic armor enters, declaring that Nalgava's time is up. The armored man approaches, and Nalgava asks why he is here. The man responds, stating that he had hoped to help, but since Nalgava has revealed too much, it is now time to silence him for good. Zem attempts to heal Nalgava, but the armored man strikes him away, telling him to save his magic for his impending death. Curran and Tiana launch fire and ice attacks, but the armored man effortlessly dodges both and knocks them out of the way. Meanwhile, Zem seizes the opportunity to heal Nalgava, who warns him that he's wasting his time. Nalgava tells Zem that focusing on him rather than protecting his teammates is a mistake. He adds that Zem's so-called kindness is actually self-serving, and it will lead to everyone's demise. Shocked by Nalgava's words, Zem hesitates, unsure of what to do. Nick, seeing the others incapacitated, requests to engage the armored man himself, but is struck down in the process. Zem, in a panic, realizes that his indecision has cost them another chance. He's at a loss, but then a telepathic message from Olivia interrupts his thoughts. She informs him that she will buy them some time and urges him to make a decision. Suddenly, Olivia leaps from the roof and kicks the armored man away. She strides toward him, accusing him of stealing magic tools, performing strange rituals, and supplying weapons to the worshippers of the demon god. Recognizing him by his golden white mask, she details her knowledge of him. But White Mask doesn't know who she is. He warns her that her excessive knowledge will be the cause of her death. Charging at her, he attacks, but Olivia stops his sword with her bare hands, then swiftly moves behind him to strike. Before White Mask can react, she unleashes a barrage of attacks, cracking his mask, though it regenerates almost immediately. As they continue to clash, Olivia realizes that the mask is a relic from an ancient civilization, and her attacks won't break it. Meanwhile, Nick and Zem successfully perform a union spell, fusing with each other. White Mask, shocked by the display of ancient magic, wonders if they are wielding the sacred blade that was absent during the last war. Zem Yeon, aware that White Mask is using a similar power, decides to reveal his own. He activates his special ability, trapping the fleeing Olivia in a red sphere. The sphere pulls her to the ground, rendering her immobile. White Mask explains that the red sphere amplifies gravity, temperature, and air pressure, making it impossible for a normal human to survive inside for long. Olivia can only curse him in response. Zem, eager to help, is stopped by Kazuna, who warns that intervening would result in him being trapped in the sphere as well. Suddenly, White Mask attacks, but Zem manages to block the heavy blow. Using his superior agility, Zem speeds past White Mask, landing rapid strikes that overwhelm him. White Mask struggles to keep up with Zem's fast-paced attacks, even more so when he realizes Zem is creating invisible footholds mid-air, allowing him to turn and move with astonishing speed. This disruption causes White Mask's focus on the red sphere to weaken, loosening its grip on Olivia. She quickly recovers, shattering the sphere with her magic, then hurls a heavy pot at White Mask. He narrowly dodges it, then charges toward Zem. Anticipating his move, White Mask lands a hit on Zem, but it turns out to be exactly what Zem wanted. At that moment, Kazuna, in his cross-shaped form, flies toward them and strikes White Mask directly in the face. Everyone assumes the battle is over, but White Mask pulls a healing weapon from his mask, which regenerates instantly. He acknowledges that they are stronger than he had anticipated, and that he was almost defeated. Realizing the danger, he escapes, causing a massive explosion as he does so. The building collapses around them, but everyone escapes unharmed. Everyone except Nalgava, who is trapped under the rubble. Zem and Curran rush to assist him, but Olivia intervenes. Nalgava tells Zem that it is too late for him, as he too is afflicted by the yellow demon disease. Nalgava asks everyone to leave him behind and escape before the building collapses, but Zem casts a pain-numbing spell on him before going. The building begins to crumble, and Nalgava remarks that he will tell his daughter in heaven about his battle with the adventurers, knowing she would be pleased. As the building continues to fall, the team is forced to flee. Within minutes, the structure is reduced to rubble. The team mourns Nalgava's death, and Curran encourages them not to be too sorrowful, reminding them that in the end, Nalgava redeemed the old priest's soul. Overcome with emotion, Zem begins to cry. Though the stepping man case has concluded, Olivia warns that their troubles are far from over. She reveals that White Mask remains at large, and there are even more powerful forces behind him. She suspects that if his masters authorized the use of forbidden weapons, the situation is far more dire than they realize. Putting that aside, Nick asks Olivia to reveal her true identity, as she is too powerful and knowledgeable to be merely a reporter. The others agree, urging her to share the truth since they fought alongside her as teammates. Olivia leans toward Kazuna and asks if he is the Sword of Bonds, to which he nods. She then decides to come clean, admitting that she is the Elemental Class Anti-Demon God Combat Training Program, also known as the Sword of War. After the battle with White Mask, the survivors return to their rooms, spending a considerable amount of time idly recovering from their injuries and reflecting on their experiences. Kazuna feels disturbed by the group's inactivity, especially since they have no immediate tasks at hand. Suddenly, Nick rises from his bed, retrieves a broken sword from a drawer, and is flooded with memories. As a child, Nick had been traveling to Labyrinth City with his parents when their carriage was attacked. At the time, young Nick couldn't fully grasp the chaos unfolding around him. His mother, however, swiftly opened a hidden compartment containing their money, placed Nick inside it, and told him that both she and his father loved him dearly before closing the compartment's door. The sounds of sword clashes and screams of pain filled Nick's ears, yet he still could not comprehend the gravity of the situation. Soon after, one of the bandits who had attacked their carriage entered and began rummaging through their belongings. He discovered the secret compartment beneath a barrel, but by that time Nick had already escaped. Nick encountered Argas, who upon seeing him drew a dagger. However, instead of turning it on Nick, he used it to kill a bandit who had been advancing toward them. Argas then embraced Nick, apologizing for arriving too late to save his friends from the bandits. Afterward, Argas took Nick in, adopting him and training him to become an adventurer. On their first mission, Argas led him into an area infested with slimes and kept emphasizing the importance of trust among adventurers. Though they should always remain vigilant, Nick, still inexperienced, fumbled and slipped on the slime, prompting Argas to laugh. Later, Argas presented Nick with a short sword as a symbol of his progress as an adventurer. However, that sword was shattered during a fight with a monster. Now, Nick holds the same broken sword, a relic filled with many memories. In the present, Nick reflects on the time Argas had kicked him from the party. He wonders if he had done something differently, whether he could have remained there. He eventually falls asleep, thoughts of the past lingering in his mind. He awakens when the rain starts, and after a while he rises from his bed. Hearing a familiar voice, he looks out the window in surprise, and spots Agate standing on the road humming to herself. She expresses concern, noting that the rain doesn't seem to be stopping soon. Suddenly, Nick lowers the umbrella she had given him during their first encounter. Agate thanks him and, realizing she never asked, inquires about his name. Nick jokingly introduces himself as a stray dog who loves idols, prompting her to smile. They talk about how it had rained the day they first met, and Agate softly whispers that she too was saved because of that day. Nick and Agate continue their conversation, with Nick's hand growing tired from holding the umbrella. Agate insists that he keep holding it until the rain stops, but the downpour only intensifies. Meanwhile, in the slums, Zem is running Nalgava's clinic after his death, tending to the patients. He senses the deep respect the slum dwellers had for Nalgava, recognizing that despite his darker side, he was a capable and revered doctor. Zem observes Zem's actions and realizes that he is trying to fill Nalgava's shoes, mourning his loss in his own way. Elsewhere in the city, Tiana wakes from her sleep and gazes at the moon, feeling disconnected from her life. Though everything seems uneventful and she's winning at gambling, she finds herself bored and detached from her routine. Despite her victories, she longs for something more meaningful. The following day, the group gathers at their usual meeting place. Curran arrives last, asking everyone how they are. They all assure her they're fine, though Kazuna notices Zem's shoes and robe are dirty and inquires if he has been working in the slums. Zem responds, reminding Kazuna that they aren't supposed to meddle in each other's personal matters. Later that night, while Zem is in his clinic, Kazuna visits him. He reassures Zem that he's not there to interfere but is merely acting as his bodyguard, knowing the dangers that lurk in the slums. The next day, they reconvene and Curran asks if everyone has eaten. The group informs Curran that they've already eaten breakfast and she decides to go eat on her own. As she walks alone, her thoughts drift to Kalios and his betrayal. She acknowledges that despite the betrayal, her time adventuring with him and the others had been enjoyable. However, she cannot forgive him for stealing the Dragon King's jewel. Lost in these thoughts, she encounters a newcomer being scammed by the same pendant dealer who had once tried to trick her. Curran teaches the scammer a lesson and sends the girl on her way. Just as she's about to leave, her friends arrive, surprising her. They explain that they're there to check on the preparations for the summer sleep festival. Curran shows little interest in the festival details, but the promise of food piques her interest. She wonders if spending time happily with her friends might make her hatred and desire for revenge fade, though she doesn't dwell on it for long. At that moment, Olivia runs toward them, shouting about breaking news. She tries to hype everyone up for the big reveal, but only Kazuna falls for her antics. Tiana reads the news from a magazine, claiming that the legendary dark demon god is on the brink of revival. Nick and Tiana dismiss it as fake news, but Olivia confidently insists that her trusted source confirms the story. She mentions the reliable "trust me bro" source, though no one is convinced. Olivia then shares her suspicions about the black market from which White Mask obtained the Illusion King's jewel. Curran, intrigued, asks if the black market also deals in the Dragon King's jewel. She expresses confusion to her friends, confessing that while she's enjoying their time together, she still cannot move past her past. Tiana tells Curran that there's no reason to be confused, she should face her past head-on. However, this time she won't be alone, everyone will accompany her. Zem and Nick also agree, and Olivia adds that they might uncover clues about White Mask while in the black market. She proposes that they find him, trace his connections, and eventually confront the ultimate villain of their world. Kazuna is eager to take part, while Nick believes he's once again being manipulated by Olivia. This time, though, everyone else seems to have fallen for her scheme as well, and Nick reluctantly joins in. As they raise their hands in agreement, a fireworks display begins behind them. They turn around to see the festival has already started, prompting them to head over and join the festivities. Nick buys cotton candy and heads to the jail to bring some to Leon. Meanwhile, the others enjoy the fireworks, and Curran follows her solo adventure into a restaurant. The cat girl Curran saw earlier follows her into the restaurant, which happens to be owned by Abates X DNY. Agat is also performing at the festival, and Nick enjoys watching her, cheering her on. Meanwhile, Tiana returns to her gambling. Kazuna and Olivia sit together, discussing the two legendary artifact weapons. He asks Olivia's opinion on the survivors, particularly those trained as the Sword of War to combat demons. Olivia responds that they are the ones who will eventually defeat the demon god. But that day is still distant. She notes that their current skepticism is acceptable, but they will need to trust each other more in the future. When that moment comes, it will be up to them to recognize it.